This hillside is running a passive earth-to-air heat exchanger. The air entering these beds right now is 26 degrees warmer than the frozen ambient air. The engine driving this is Subterranean Thermal Mass. Right now, while the ambient air is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the stabilized output is 58 degrees. That is a 26-degree thermal delta, generated by the Earth's thermal inertia and moved by thermal buoyancy alone. I am going to show you exactly how this works, including a live smoke test to make this passive movement visible. This is 2,700-year-old Qanat engineering that most gardeners have never heard of. Every high-latitude gardener faces the same thermodynamic equation in winter. You want to maintain photosynthetic activity, but the ambient temperature forces biological dormancy. Almost every solution on the market forces you into a carbon-dependent heating cycle. Cold climate gardeners are being conditioned to fund a propane-reliant thermal infrastructure every single season. Ohio State University extension data confirms the economic trap. Heating a standard 2,160 square foot high tunnel structure costs between $1,277 and $1,919 per year in natural gas alone. That is before polyethylene film replacement or labor. The commercial greenhouse heating market is currently a $1.8 billion industry, projected to reach $3.2 billion by 2031. This is a business model built on thermal transmittance waste and the low-density polyethylene film covering these structures. It creates a hidden environmental debt. It tears, it photo-degrades, and it sheds. A 2023 peer-reviewed study in Environmental Science and Technology by Ding and colleagues documented polyethylene-derived microplastic contamination of up to 8,318 particles per kilogram of soil in the top 10 centimeters of growing beds. This architectural logic is not my invention. It is a rediscovery of ancient technological debt. The earliest archaeological record of this system dates to the reign of Sargon II of Assyria, between 705 and 681 BCE. Persian and Assyrian engineers had mastered subterranean thermal transfer centuries before the birth of modern thermodynamics. They utilized underground hydraulic channels called Qanats to move both water and air through the Earth's crust. These channels maintained a subterranean thermal equilibrium between 10 and 13.5 degrees Celsius year-round, regardless of surface volatility. They did not use fuel. They used the Earth's geothermal inertia as a massive thermal battery. By integrating these with above-ground structures known as Badgirs or wind-induction towers, they created a system of passive ventilation driven entirely by atmospheric pressure differentials. In harsh desert environments, these ancient heat exchangers achieved a documented indoor temperature reduction of 5 degrees Celsius without a single mechanical component. Modern building science has finally categorized this ancient data under two specific knowledge graph nodes: the stack effect and the earth-to-air heat exchanger. This hillside is a modern application of that 2,700-year-old thermal engineering, and I am going to show you the data that proves it still works. The structural logic of the system begins at the intake. Cold ambient air enters at the base of the hill and is channeled through a buried high-density polyethylene heat exchange conduit. The pipe is subterranean, embedded in a soil profile that maintains a thermal equilibrium independent of surface volatility. Building scientists define this as subterranean thermal mass, but more specifically, it is a lithospheric thermal battery. It captures solar energy during the summer months and, through a process called thermal lag, releases that energy slowly throughout the winter. As the air travels through the conduit, a sensible heat exchange occurs. The air absorbs the soil's stored energy. By the time it reaches the root zones, it has been thermally conditioned without a single watt of external electricity. But the critical engineering question is, what is the mass flow rate? What moves the air? In a mechanical system, an axial fan provides the force. In this passive system, movement is driven by buoyancy-driven ventilation, also known as the stack effect. Because warm air has a lower density than cold air, it rises. As this warm air ascends through the vertical exit point, it creates a negative pressure zone behind it. This vacuum continuously pulls new, dense air into the intake at the base. It is a self-powering convective loop that operates without human intervention. A 2010 peer-reviewed study in renewable energy by Marifat and Hagagi mathematically modeled this exact mechanism. Air flowing upward through a subterranean channel driven solely by the stack effect. The exit vent at the top of the hill functions as a solar chimney. This vertical elevation creates the pressure gradient necessary to drive the entire fluid system. Virginia Tech verified this principle in a field test using a 100-foot earth-to-air heat exchanger buried 8 feet deep. They documented a significant inlet-to-outlet temperature delta in real-world conditions. The physics of geothermal heat exchange is universal, whether you are cooling a desert structure or, in my case, preventing rhizosphere freezing in a cold climate terrace. Everything I have described so far is theoretical fluid dynamics. Now we move to in situ flow visualization to make the invisible visible. Watch the smoke. Notice the laminar flow as it is pulled toward the intake. This is not mechanical suction. There is no axial fan. This is atmospheric pressure gradient at work. The stack effect is creating a continuous vacuum, pulling air inward passively, even in these sub-freezing conditions. What you are seeing is the subterranean plumbing of the Earth itself. Now, look at the exhaust point at the top of the hill. The air has traveled uphill through the thermal battery of the Earth and is emerging here. This movement is driven entirely by thermal buoyancy and convective induction. Zero mechanical assistance, 0 kilowatt-hours consumed. The ambient air temperature right now is exactly 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the freezing point. The earth-to-air heat exchanger output at the growing bed entry point is 58 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a 26-degree thermal delta, documented and verified on camera in real time. This is the measured performance of a passive geothermal heat exchange system. It is powered by nothing but the geothermal gradient of this hillside and the fundamental laws of fluid statics. This is not a simulation, and it is not a diagram. This is what empirical data looks like in the field. The specific efficacy of 58 degrees Fahrenheit is dictated by a single, often ignored physiological variable. Most season extension content focuses on ambient air, but the critical metric is the Rhizosphere thermal equilibrium, the temperature at the root zone where microbial activity and nutrient uptake occur. Thermophilic crops, such as solanum, lycopersicum, and peppers, require a minimum rhizosphere temperature of approximately 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit to maintain metabolic activity. Below this 55-degree threshold, root hydraulic conductance decreases, water viscosity increases, and the plant's ability to transport phosphorus and other macronutrients is compromised. The result is biological stagnation. The plant remains alive but enters a state of metabolic arrest, ceasing all production. The earth-to-air heat exchanger output of 58 degrees Fahrenheit lands precisely within this verified biological threshold. This system is not merely warming air for human comfort. It is stabilizing the soil-plant-atmosphere continuum. It maintains the exact thermal window required for cold-sensitive crops to remain productive in a sub-freezing environment with zero supplemental fuel. What you are witnessing is subterranean thermal inertia performing the heavy lifting that would otherwise require a $1,900 per year carbon-intensive heating infrastructure. Before we quantify the harvest, we must evaluate the environmental debt of our infrastructure. The buried conduit in this hillside is high-density polyethylene, installed below the threshold of UV-induced photooxidation. Shielded from the degradation that destroys surface-level polymers, its verified service lifespan in a subterranean installation exceeds 50 years. This is not a temporary fix. It is a permanent thermal infrastructure. In contrast, standard low-density polyethylene greenhouse film has a replacement cycle of only 2 to 4 years. Over a 50-year horizon that represents 25 full-scale film replacements. Each cycle generates massive polymer waste and sheds microparticles into the very soil it is meant to protect. The 2023 study in Environmental Science and Technology by Ding and colleagues provides the empirical proof. Long-term polyethylene use results in microplastic sequestration of up to 8,318 particles per kilogram in the top 10 centimeters of the soil profile. This contamination is not transient. It is a permanent chemical record that accumulates in the rhizosphere where you grow your food. This buried heat exchanger will still be operational when that surface plastic has been replaced a dozen times. Furthermore, the operating expense of this system is $0 per year. When compared against the $1,277 to $1,919 annual carbon debt of conventional fuel-based heating, the life cycle assessment is definitive. You are choosing between a recurring financial and environmental tax or a one-time investment in geothermal sovereignty. The passive thermodynamic loop is now operational, and the empirical data is on record. However, stabilizing the temperature is only the first phase of subterranean climate control. The next critical variable is the edaphic factor, how the soil composition itself interacts with the earth-to-air heat exchanger output. In the next video, I am conducting a controlled comparative analysis within these stabilized beds. I am testing whether a pyrolyzed carbon matrix, specifically biochar pre-inoculated with vermicompost-derived microbial tea, creates a measurable increase in rhizosphere thermal retention. The hypothesis is that biochar functions as a thermal capacitor, increasing the specific heat capacity of the soil and providing a secondary stabilization layer that stacks with the geothermal input. I have already established the baseline thermal readings. The test plots are calibrated, and in the next installment, I will release the full data set to track this knowledge cluster and see if these two systems create a thermal synergism. Ensure you are subscribed. The data is coming.